Hi, guys. We are on part 5 now of this Beyond the Bible series. We're looking at the Essene Gospel of Peace today, and a lot of people have a problem with this. If you are in the Christian community or Torah community, it's just one of those things where they say, well, it's not a part of the Bible, so we won't accept it. And that's just the most traditional mentality when you approach things like this. A lot of people will say, well, that's Gnostic or that's New Age. And so we're going to look at it because really it's just been drilled into our minds. What the word Gnostic is just means gnosis, which is knowledge. And New Age, it's one of those terms that just gets thrown around, just like the word Gnostic. It just gets thrown around, and when things are new to people, just unfamiliar, they are quick to throw out those words to make it seem as if something like this is New Age or Gnostic. And most of the time, people don't even know what that word means or those phrases. So um, I think my previous videos have established why it's good to look outside the Bible for more information. And like I said, knowledge or gnosis is knowledge. Knowledge comes from having information. Information, we're looking at more sides of the story than just what they feed us in the traditional canon. And I don't think I have to go over that again, but here, why don't I just start with one of these passages from the book? I might read a few different things from book one. Is the main, it's the main writing or the main text that people refer to when looking at the Gospel of Peace. There are 4 books, but one thing that really stuck out is that Moses said to my Lord, and this is Yeshua speaking. And Moses said to my Lord, my heart is filled with sorrow. He's recapping on what happened in the wilderness. And he's teaching others about this. For my people will be lost. They are without knowledge and are not able to understand thy commandments. So Jesus knows that the people that Moses was dealing with a people who couldn't understand the commandments. They couldn't live up to them, the top 10. If you watched yesterday's video about is veganism a sin, or I'm sorry, is eating meat a sin? I went over this, how there is a difference between the commandments and the other 600 plus laws that were given because people couldn't live up to the commandments. And that's what this text establishes. And I think it's just neat that it reiterates or just solidifies what we've come to understand about the 10 Commandments being that highest moral, and how the other laws were given because they couldn't live up to that standard. Now get this, because this is good. Moses says they can't understand your commandments. They are as little children who cannot understand their father's words. Suffer, Lord, that I give them other laws that they may not perish. So what's happening here? God gave the 10 Commandments. They couldn't live up to them. Moses is pleading with him. Suffer that I give them other laws that they may not perish. And then he goes on. If they may not be with thee, Lord, let them not be against thee, that they may sustain themselves. And when time has come and they are ripe for thy words, reveal to them thy laws. Okay. And then he goes on again. For that did Moses break the 2 tablets of stone whereon were written the 10 commandments, and he gave them 10 times 10 in their stead. And of these 10 times 10, the scribes and Pharisees have made 100 times 10 commandments, and they have laid unbearable burdens on your shoulders that they themselves do not carry. For the more nigh are the commandments to God, the less do we need. And the farther they are from God, the more do we need. Wherefore are the laws of the Pharisees and scribes innumerable, the laws of the Son of Man 7, of the angels 3, and of God 1. So to me, that is just powerful, because it really does solidify what we understand of this higher moral standard and people not living up to it. So give them more laws so that they can at least abide by those laws, even though it's a lower moral standard. And it's funny how he ties it in with the Pharisees, who were giving such innumerable laws. And the more of those, the less do we need. The more nigh are the commandments to God, the less do we need, and the farther they are from God. He's saying the more commandments that you give people, the farther they are going to be from God. And so what I think is funny is that we're dealing with a community today in Torah who thinks that, yes, there are so many laws that we need to do them all. They all apply. And it's like just the fact that they are so committed, or they are so loyal, I guess. What's the word I'm looking for? They are so, they're just committed to those laws, that they are farther from God because they think all of those laws are the standard, when clearly we were given just a small set that we could practice and live up to daily. And if we follow those, then we don't need all the other laws. Okay, so that's one thing I think is neat about the Gospel of Peace, is that when Jesus is talking about the laws and the morality of God, he's really filling in the gaps of where the Gospels were revised, or where things were omitted. And but it really lines up with all of our research. If you have researched biblical veganism, the first century church, all these other writers, you don't even have to go to the Gospel of Peace to see it. But once you do, it will reaffirm everything else that you have researched. And that's how it worked with me. It was one of the last places that I went, just because I couldn't validate the authenticity. But that's okay. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But I've cited mostly from the Gospel of the Holy 12 throughout shifting the Torah paradigm. But once you get to the last chapter, that's when I start citing from the Gospel of Peace. And it's because there is controversial nature in that source especially, and even the Gospel of the Holy 12. But it's just difficult for others. You can't convince them that we can gain further insight by reading these books. Most people say, well, all I need is the Bible, and that's enough. And if that's your attitude after everything that I've talked about in the videos, or if you've read the book, then I won't be able to convince you one way or another. And I can't convince anyone who's not willing to research. Some people are only willing to hear one side of the story, and they will disregard anything that doesn't align with their existing paradigm. That's why people are just fighting tooth and nail against veganism, because they're not willing to research, and anything that you bring to the table as support is not good enough to them, because they're not open-minded enough to look at anything further than what tradition has had to offer. Okay, but to me, that's not growth. It just displays the self-imposed limitations that people place over themselves. Okay, now one argument against the Gospel of Peace is that, like I said, its origin cannot be validated. And it seems like a strong case, but it fails to recognize that we can't validate the origin of any gospel, whether it's extra-biblical or one of the 4 canonical gospels. Quite frankly, nobody can prove the origin of Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, okay? And it's not that I'm trying to cast doubt about the books of the Bible, but it's only by tradition that we have accepted the self-titled authorships for each gospel in our canon. And that's no different than the books of Moses. But as for the Essene Gospel of Peace, it was found in the Vatican Library in 1923. A man named Edmond Bordeaux, don't know how to pronounce his last name. It is Zetkli. He translated his findings into a 4-part series. Like I showed you, there are 4 books. And we have that today. You can get it on Amazon. I mean, it's just available anywhere. But not many people can accept that book as a legitimate source because it offers a slant on the gospel that is not seen in the canon. That story that I just read where Jesus is talking about the commandments, even though it fits to a T, people still think, well, it's a little different than what the Gospels say in the Bible, so reject it. That's just people's mentality. If it doesn't line up with the nominal gauge of the Bible, the 66-book canon, throw it out. And the other videos I talked about why that mentality is a problem. So if you need to go back, go back. The Essene Gospel of Peace by itself does not prove that Yeshua was a vegetarian. And I don't use it to prove vegetarianism in the 1st century. That's not why I use it, okay? But its stance on vegetarianism is consistent with many other writings that have survived time, like Clement, the homilies, the recognitions, and the Gospel of the Holy 12. So any evidence that we have can be seen collectively by comparing various documents that reveal this belief, no different than comparing the Dead Sea Scrolls to the canon. That's what people are okay to do that, but and it's the same process in when the historical data that I've collected and put in Shifting the Torah Paradigm, it would be irrational to suggest that vegetarianism was not a central issue during Yeshua's ministry and the first few generations of the Jesus movement. I mean, it just was. Historically, that is one of the central issues. Vegetarianism, staying away from meat altogether. From all the pieces of information that are available, the case for biblical vegetarianism is strong enough without this gospel, okay? I don't typically cite from this source because I don't need to, like when I'm writing. I've been using it a lot more lately, and I've been showing a lot of people on social media a lot of the good nuggets that are in it. And, not surprising, that's where I'm hearing people come out and saying, you're a New Ager now. You have fallen into New Age-ism, and you're Gnostic. Things like that. It's like they're just programmed to throw those accusations out there, not even knowing the proper use of those words, not even able to define what it means to be a New Ager. But at the same time, even though we can't validate authenticity, like I said, we can't validate any of the other gospels either, but people don't even think about that. Anyway, we can verify much of its content does align with the 1st century vegetarian lifestyle that we find in other historical writings. Okay. In the opening passage, to me, that was one of the main things. It's almost as if the text just lays out the entire concessional agreement between Yahweh and the Israelites. And we talked about this in other videos. It was a concession to their human weakness for him to allow them to consume flesh because they were unwilling to abide by thou shalt not kill. They were unwilling to abide by the dietary plan that he laid out in the garden. So they were given extensions of the law that allowed them to do it, but only within the prescribed area, only certain kinds of animals, only certain times of the year, and within done by certain people. A priest had to oversee it. So very, very limited animal consumption was allowed. People think they were doing this every day. They think, it's breakfast time, let's go to the tabernacle and bring a bull, and then, all that throughout the day, breakfast, lunch, dinner. And it's like, think about that in a congregation of 600,000 plus people who are, and there's one tabernacle and one priest who is supposed to be doing all of this. Just think about that. I mean, let logic sink in and think about how often one family could have done that in a group, in a congregation of 600,000 people. It's not something they were doing daily. This one family had to wait their turn, So, I mean, you just couldn't. I mean, logically, it's just not something that could have happened. It's not like it wasn't a drive-through, okay? Okay, but like I said, that opening passage, they are without knowledge, and they are not able to understand thy commandments. They are as little children who cannot yet understand their father's words. Suffer, Lord, that I give them other laws, that they may not perish. Those were the extensions of the commandments. Okay? The Israelites, they were so far gone that they could not comprehend the original Torah. The laws of creation, the design, okay? They required other laws because the 10 commandments were not enough. So the Israelites were given 10 times 10 is what the text says, to which the scribes and Pharisees made 100 times 10. So the more that mankind interfered with God's laws, the more complicated they made it, which according to the passage I read, it resulted in unbearable burdens on their shoulders. And that's why people today are so confused. They lay unbearable burdens on each other's shoulders. When you come into Torah, you're just burdened. You're weighted down with, how do I fulfill all of these laws? And it's like none of them are needed if you are abiding by original Torah. Keep it simple, okay? And as much as that passage I read speaks for itself, you have to keep reiterating this to everyone who just still doesn't get it. The closer we are to God's original design, the less we need remedial laws. And I even have a reference here. It was on page 10 of the Essene Gospel of Peace. For the more nigh are the commandments to God, the less do we need. The farther they are from God, the more we do need. Wherefore are the laws of the scribes and Pharisees innumerable. Seems like what we're dealing with today. All the traditions of Hebrew roots, the things, the superficial, the behaviors that are adopted, everything, it just matches. It's just innumerable. But if you obey the greatest command, you don't have need to go through the steps of the lesser laws. Since the blood of bulls can't take away sins, there's no need to sacrifice animals. And that's why water baptism was introduced during John the Baptist's ministry. Now, I bring up baptism because in the Essene Gospel of Peace, if you know anything about it, it talks about an aspect of baptism that we don't get from the other four Gospels in the canon. It says on a few pages into it, it's talking about baptism with water that frees you from all of these uncleanliness, abominations, which defile the temple of your body, even all the sins which abode in your body, tormenting you with all manner of pains. Sin no more, therefore, after your baptism, that the angel of error and of water may eternally abide in you and serve you evermore. So that's another thing. There's a lot of angelic activity in this gospel, and we are encouraged to communicate with the angels, because there are angels that who are appointed over humanity. And it's like, I understand, I get it, I know how it can make people feel different when reading new literature for the first time. And when I first read the Gospel of Peace, I thought, it sounds a little different. But I can't let my traditional indoctrination prevent me from looking for information or seeing what other writings have to offer. The angels of air and of water, they're mentioned in the Gospel of Peace, but not in the traditional canon, and at least they're not mentioned by the same references. But if you are familiar with the Book of Enoch, then you know that it talks about angelic activity probably more than any other historical narrative or extra biblical text. Okay, and so many of my Torah brothers or sisters, people have accepted that historical narrative. They know it's authentic, despite the strange content within its pages. So, if the Book of Enoch can be accepted, then we should at least be willing to consider the Gospel of Peace, because it reveals further details involving the assignment of angels. And that's one of the really cool things about it. A lot of angel activity in that book. Like I just read, the angel of water that may abide with you and serve you evermore. So aside from the redemptive spiritual aspect of baptism, the Gospel of Peace describes further. It's a natural healing property of water immersion, and it unites the person with the elements of the earth. And that's why in my book, Shifting the Torah Paradigm, where I talk about this, the title is called Staying Grounded. It has dual application, like spiritually grounded and staying physically grounded, okay? And if you're familiar with that concept, you might appreciate the Gospel of Peace. Now, I can't speak for everyone, but I do know that in my circle of Torah friends, grounding has gained quite a bit of popularity, just because people understand the principle of becoming one with nature. And, to some people that just sounds strange. But really, natural frequencies and electricity can be harvested from the ground. Your body can absorb life from the earth simply by contact. Now, most people, they don't consider that nutrients come from the soil and are delivered to our bodies through the plants we eat or physical contact. Okay, and then that physical contact comes from the electricity and frequencies and things like that. But as far as eating, those vitamins and minerals and nutrients that are transferred to us come through the plants we eat. And it reminded me of this documentary I watched called Kiss the Ground. I watched that last year sometime. And it was about the importance of the Earth's soil and how humanity is killing themselves by destroying the farmland that they grow the crops on. And if you know anything about that, they spray the ground with more cancer-causing agents than, like if you go to Home Depot or just a tractor store or something like that, you're going to find a whole wall of chemicals for growing plants and crops. Okay, and it's just said you can. I mean, it'll make you lightheaded just walking through those aisles, and it's like people don't put two and two together. But the ground already has the nutrients and things that we need in it. So when you're putting poison in there and killing the ground with all of these insect, these pesticides and herbicides, different things like that, you don't realize really how poisonous it is to the human the people who consume these plants and these crops. Anyway, I was analyzing all that information when I was watching it last year. My mind just began to piece together how the Creator made man from the dust of the ground. He literally formed us with the earth and designed a way for us to continually receive the fuel from the ground that we were made from by the plants we eat. And so maybe I haven't, I don't have a video about this, but I'm going to go over chapter 3 again and really talk about the plants being that natural conduit for humans to receive the nutrients from the ground. And I'll go into that a little more later. But anyway, it is as strange as it might be for us to hear. And this is where people say, oh, you're new agey. The Father is our creator. And the earth, in a sense, is our mother because that's what God made us from, okay? And people just think, oh, that's just the most new age thing I've ever heard. Don't bring it into the faith. But really, that's where the term Mother Earth comes from. It's because people throughout time have understood that we were made from the ground. Okay, of course, like I said, New Agers, and they don't think you should blend this type of mentality with Christianity or Torah principles. But like I said, we were literally made from the ground. We were made from the earth. The earth literally, in a literal sense, the earth is the mother of humanity, okay? And we feed off the earth. The earth nurses us to health, okay? So I don't think the concept is as truly foreign to our faith as we might assume. And so I say this because the Essene Gospel of Peace often does allude to healing through the contact with the earth itself. It says, sink your feet in the mire, embrace the angel of earth, that the angel of earth may draw out from your bones all uncleanliness and disease. Look, it's talking about grounding there. So even though we don't get that directive from the synoptic gospels or John, it does speak pretty clearly and loudly that a lot of people today are becoming aware of this knowledge on their own. They've embraced these healing benefits of grounding. But, you know, if you say it's, oh, Mother Earth, oh, they lose their minds. Okay? But aside from the natural healing aspect of the Gospel of Peace, ultimately the highest morale that we could possibly gain from its content is an appreciation for the design of our Creator. Okay, if we submit to the original pattern of creation, we are freed from the law of sin and death. Okay, that's what it's all about, getting back to the garden. And so we look at different places in this gospel to see how, you know, Yeshua, he even says, I tell you truly, he who kills himself. And whoever eats the flesh of slain beasts eats the body of death. All right? Kill not, neither eat the flesh of your innocent prey, lest you become the slaves of Satan. Okay? Behold, he reiterates, behold, I've given you every herb-bearing seed, every green herb for meat. So he does go over this. So it is good that it is a good read just for reiterating the vegetarian principles, but then also it goes into healing properties of grounding. That's a big part of it, and understanding the angelic activity. It really shows you about the earth, who is considered mother. Okay, I believe that it initially started as a messianic teaching that later got omitted from the canonical gospels, and other religions have embraced that, because other religions embrace a lot from the teachings of Yeshua. A lot of people don't know this, but teachings of Hinduism and Buddhism, a lot of those come from Jesus, and people don't know that. They just hear the names Buddha, you know, and they think, oh no, false religions. when actually there are many people from those religions who are practicing the teachings of Christ. And so I think a lot of people need to know that. And so, and they need to stop equating a lot of the teachings of Yeshua with New Ageism, because people just don't know their teachings of Yeshua that got lost, or that got that are being taught more from other religions. Okay, so other religions do teach teachings of Jesus, because his teachings got so widespread in the first century, and but some of them in our culture and our religious paradigm seems foreign or strange, because it was suppressed from us and we didn't get that side of it. So when we hear the teachings of Jesus that come from other religions, it's going to sound strange. It's going to sound like New Ageism, what people label it as. But like I said, this grounding stuff, people in Torah get it. There are a lot of people in Torah who I know who have embraced grounding. Okay, there are a lot of people in Torah that I know who have embraced vegetarianism. So these are teachings from Christ. Okay, but they don't see it in the traditional canon. People are coming to these revelations on their own because God is showing them things. The Holy Spirit is speaking to these people, and it just gets people are just they are basically saying that none of these teachings are of Jesus. They're from other religions, and you're adopting them. Well, no, you got it backwards. This information was a teaching of Christ. It got suppressed in the book that was given to you, that was handed to you by the Catholic Church. It omitted these teachings, and so it sounds strange to you. And now when you hear the teachings of Christ coming from another religion, it sounds like other religious beliefs, when morally it makes sense. Like it aligns with a life-giving creator. Okay? So you need to be more focused on the fact that the people who invented your religion in this Mosaic law, the people who could not live up to that Mosaic, or those 10 commandments, made this Mosaic standard, made these lesser laws, the 10 times 10 laws that the scribes had. The scribes had 10 times 100, okay, that the Essene Gospel of Peace was talking about. So your religion is actually the one who brought in these commands to allow you to do this behavior, when other religions are practicing the higher morale. So I'm afraid you got it backwards. And if that seems new agey to you, it's only because you have placed the tradition of men as your highest moral standard. And so the higher moral standard actually looks like New Ageism to you. So that's what we're dealing with here. The Essene Gospel of Peace, it just really brings it out. It really does. It just shows you that, hey, there's more to the story. It reaffirms vegetarianism. I can appreciate the text for multiple reasons. It reiterates the original diet plan, and specifies that killing animals and eating their flesh is the equivalent of submitting to Satan. That's why the prophet Isaiah called it murder, okay? And so even Yeshua, he made his avowal to the first and greatest commandment, and the second, which is like unto it. And I find that reaffirming because it's given in correlation with the order of design. You know, when he said, love thy neighbor as thyself, love the Lord your God. And that was in that text that I was reading. I didn't read it all the way, but it's in the Gospels, in your Bible, and it's in the Gospel of Peace. I give you these commandments: love God and love your neighbor. Okay? But if we submit to what Yeshua initially imparted, the creation, the design, then we would automatically be within the moral standards of what he imparted next, which was the greatest commandment, okay? And this is the moral theme throughout the book: to honor the Creator by demonstrating proper dominion over creation. People don't do that today. They eat the creation. They're not being good stewards. They're not dominating the way they were expected to. They're being bad priests. They're bad Levites. Okay? It says, I'll read the text again. Well, this is going to be a new text from this book, but it comes from the Essene Gospel of Peace. It says, after these words, they all remained silent, save one who called out, "What am I to do, Master? I see a wild beast rend my brother in the forest. Shall I let my brother perish or kill the wild beast? Shall I thus transgress the law?" He's saying, what if my brother is being attacked by a wild beast? What do I do? If I kill the beast, am I transgressing the law? Jesus answered, it was said to them of old time, all beasts that move upon the earth, all the fish of the sea, and all the fowl of the air are given into thy power. I tell you truly, of all scriptures living upon the earth, God created only man after his image. Wherefore beasts are for man, not man for beasts. You do not therefore transgress the law if you kill the wild beast to save your brother's life. For I tell you truly, man is more than the beast, but he who kills the beast without cause, though the beast attack him not, though it is lust for slaughter, or for its flesh, or for its hide, or yet for its tusks, evil is the deed which he does. For he is turned into a wild beast himself. Wherefore his end also as the end of wild beasts. Okay, so yeah, he's saying if someone's being attacked by a wild beast, kill the beast. But if you are killing for food, or its tusks, its hide, or just the sheer lust for killing, which today we would know that as hunters who go out and kill as game, as a form of sport, okay? He's saying that does transgress the law. Which law? The highest moral standard, the law of creation, the law of design. So I've heard a lot of people say 1 John 3:4, it means sin is transgression of the law. I explained this in yesterday's video that we're dealing with different standards, different legal systems. And John, he knew the difference between the law of creation, the law of design, the 10 Commandments, that highest moral standard, whatever you want to call them, the original Torah, the everlasting agreement. He understood that. So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin. And that's from James. I really like that one because that one deals with your conscience. And people are afraid to use their conscience when trying to determine what is sin or not. They go straight to 1 John 3:4. They say that it applies to the 600 laws that Moses gave, that the scribes gave, that the 10 times 10, the 10 times 100, and they say, do those laws or else you're transgressing the law. But like I said, if you read James, I feel like James has a higher moral standard because it determines that our moral compass should have a voice in the matter. It is all about recognizing which legal standard is the highest morale. And I know a lot of people have negative things to say about the Essene Gospel of Peace, but I have witnessed others benefit from its contents. I have benefited from its contents. I've personally gained many valuable insights, and I think for me, it's always neat to see the theological connections, everything coming together, but at the same time, the spiritual value of the book and what it has to say about becoming one with nature and grounding and literally picking up or harvesting that energy from the earth because of the electricity. That's why that's why people are in shoes and socks every day. It's almost like the adversary wants people to be on these silicone souls for the rest of their lives and not gain any benefit from the earth. So I don't consider this source to be my authority, my final authority for doctrine. I believe it's beneficial to those who have an open mind. The Essene Gospel of Peace, it might not be for everyone, but frankly, not everyone is ready for this conversation. Those who are ready to explore, though, if you're ready for something deeper, it can be fruitful to your lifestyle, especially book one. But for those who are ready to explore, yes, open it up. That's really all I have for the Essene Gospel of Peace. If you want to stay, I may look through the pages and read some highlights. There are a few things that I thought were really good theologically. I won't talk about all of the grounding and stuff. I mean, it really matches a lot of what you read in the Gospels, a lot, even verbatim. He's like some of the stories, some of the stories that you read in the Gospels, you can read and hear and say, yeah, that's exactly like what the Gospel Luke says here, or John or Matthew. And it's really good because of that. There was one place I really wanted to talk about. If not, it's okay, because it's in other videos. It's in other videos that I've written this stuff down. That's okay. I may not read because I can't find the one. Okay, here it is. I got it. Sorry about that. Sorry about the wait. But Jesus sat down by their midst. He said, I tell you truly, none can be happy except he do the law. And now probably a bunch of Torah people are saying, yeah, the law, do the law. And the others answered and said, we do all the laws of Moses, our lawgiver, and even as they are written in the Holy Scriptures. And this is where Torah people are going to have a problem. And Jesus answered, seek not the law in your scriptures, for the law is life, whereas the scripture is dead. I tell you truly, Moses received not his laws from God in writing, but through the living word. The law is living word of living God to living prophets for living men. In everything that has life is the law written. You find it in the grass, the tree, in the river, in the mountain, in the birds of the heaven, in the fishes of the sea, but seek it chiefly in yourselves. For I tell you truly, all living things are nearer to God than the scripture which is without life. He's saying exactly what it says in Philippians, that, look, seek out your own salvation with fear and trembling. God, this is your own journey, okay? And don't look to what is popular in the world of theology, in the world of religion. Don't look to what's popular. God speaks to everyone on an individual basis. And we have this idea that he doesn't, especially the church I came from. They think, they almost equate salvation to your church attendance. Be here every Sunday. Give your tithes. If you don't do this, you're not in the club. You know what I mean? And, if you don't conform to that system or what they teach as being the truth, then you're a backslider. And I mean, it's just, I've never seen such an extreme group of people in the church I came. Well, until I came into Torah and saw that it's the exact same thing all over again. It's just that they've adopted a different religion, a different foundation for doctrine. Okay. Anyway, but what Jesus is trying to say here is that, look, you can learn truth. You can have a relationship with God. It doesn't matter where you're coming from. I tell you truly, all living things are nearer to God than the scripture, which is without life. God so made life and all living things that they might by the everlasting word teach the laws of the true God to man. God wrote not the laws in the pages of books, but in your heart and in your spirit. I tell you truly that the scripture is the work of man, but life and its hosts are the work of our God. And then it goes on to talk about fasting. And that's another thing. Fasting is a very biblical principle. And this book really emphasizes fasting. And is that a New Age religion? You know what I mean? No, it's just showing you more to the story. That's the gospel of peace in a nutshell, in a tiny nutshell. There's so much more to it. I do encourage people to read it. And that's where I will leave you with for now. I think that's a good introduction. You got some of my thoughts, but read it for yourself, because your journey, it's different than mine. Different things are gonna pop out to you. And like I said, I just encourage people to at least check it out. So if you like this video, give it a like, do all the stuff. I'll talk to you later.